XRP's potential 200x price surge. Imagine awakening to find the value next to your XRP holdings multiplied by 200 times overnight. Yeah? That scenario probably just sent a jolt through your chest. Today, we're diving into a bold hypothetical. What if XRP, yes, the often underestimated XRP, managed to absorb every liquid dollar in the US economy? Understanding M1, the foundation of US cash flow. We're talking about every worn dollar bill, every checking account balance, the entire US M1 money supply. These figures are so massive, they dwarf national GDPs and render trillion-dollar budgets almost quaint. This isn't some crypto-fueled fever dream. The data is grounded, the math is sound, and by the time we're done, you'll understand why some speculate XRP could soar to $186, even $316 per coin, and how much stands in its way. Let's set the stage. The Federal Reserve's own H6 report clocks the M1 supply at roughly $18.46 trillion in January 2025, edging up to $18.56 trillion by March. That's every physical dollar, coin, and instantly spendable deposit. The financial lifeblood that buys your groceries and fuels Black Friday frenzies. Now compare that torrent of liquidity to XRP's current situation. Live pricing floats near $2.12 per coin, with about 58.5 billion tokens in active circulation. That gives XRP a market cap in the ballpark of $124 billion, not insignificant, but still a speck beside that $18.5 trillion behemoth. The moonshot equation. Here's the wild speculative leap. If XRP's total market capitalization somehow equaled the entire US M1 supply, each coin would skyrocket to approximately $186, assuming the full supply of 99.98 billion tokens is used. Restrict it to the circulating supply of 58.39 billion, and the theoretical price explodes to a jaw-dropping $316 per XRP. Fantasy or foresight? Sound like something out of the Marvel multiverse? Maybe, but let's entertain the logic. Imagine every physical dollar and every checking account balance transitioning onto the Ripple ledger, from grandma's cookie jar quarters to your company's payroll reserve. That's not just a technological overhaul. It's a complete monetary paradigm shift. Americans would have to trust a blockchain token as instinctively as they trust George Washington's face on paper money. And for context, we still struggle to get people to download a parking meter app. But here's the curveball. Adoption moves fast. Remember how contactless payments seemed futuristic a decade ago? Today, toddlers wave smartphones at vending machines like Jedi apprentices. Ripple's value proposition, fast, low-cost, cross-border transactions, fits perfectly into that trajectory. If major banks, fintech firms, or even one daring central bank embrace XRP as a settlement asset, the dominoes could fall quickly. What the analysts are whispering. Some projections already reflect this potential. According to Changelly, XRP could flirt with $186 by January 2040. Other forecasts, including those from Telegram, suggest even more bullish outcomes. Final roadblock: federal oversight. Of course, SEC regulations and federal gatekeepers loom like dragons at the gate. But if XRP ever gets the green light and the right infrastructure support, that 200x headline might one day shift from fantasy to financial history. Token supply, escrow, and the scarcity dilemma. Curiosity may drive the dream, but regulatory skepticism remains a towering obstacle. Convincing lawmakers and financial authorities to entrust the nation's entire monetary base to a ledger, partly governed by a private entity, is like scaling Everest in a blizzard. And then there's the issue of supply mechanics. Unlike Bitcoin's rigid cap of 21 million, XRP's total supply nears 100 billion, with scheduled escrow releases introducing new liquidity over time. Unless a radical token burn or permanent lock mechanism rewrites the scarcity equation, each individual XRP retains a relatively slim share of the pie. So to push toward triple-digit prices, we'd need a monsoon-level surge in demand, not just a gentle wave. Facing competition, stablecoins, CBDCs, and institutional rivals. XRP's uphill battle doesn't end with supply. Stablecoin issuers, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and emerging settlement networks are all racing to stake their claim on the future of digital money. If the Federal Reserve launches a digital dollar, it could siphon off liquidity and attention long before XRP gets its invitation to the big leagues. Yet the optimism persists. There's a reason XRP continues to attract believers. Ripple already partners with hundreds of global institutions, and on-demand liquidity, ODL usage, is consistently posting double-digit growth. The appeal for CFOs is obvious: significant cost savings on cross-border fees. Each newly opened corridor, say USD to Philippine peso, adds legitimacy, incrementally nudging XRP toward mainstream relevance. It's like expanding a subway system. Once enough, stops are on the map, traffic naturally begins to flow. A personal glimpse into the future of payments. Here's a snapshot from my own life. A few weeks ago, I needed to pay a freelance designer in Europe. My traditional bank quoted 3 business days and a fee that looked more like a luxury tax. Instead, I sent USDC to an exchange, converted it to XRP, and the designer had spendable euros before my kettle finished boiling. That small win is what fuels the faith behind the XRP movement. Now, multiply that frictionless experience across millions of remittances and business invoices, and suddenly, a $124 billion market cap seems far less outlandish. Global liquidity beyond the US M1 supply. Still, to absorb the entire US M1 money supply? That's akin to asking every barista in America to pour oat milk blindfolded. The concept? Imaginable. The execution? Utter chaos. But let's broaden the horizon. Even if Ripple somehow captured the entire US liquidity, that's just one slice of the global pie. Worldwide, M1 liquidity floats north of $50 trillion, meaning the projected 186 to 369 price range could expand dramatically if global adoption truly takes off. Of course, inflation, monetary expansion, and global politics will move the goalposts, perhaps substantially, by 2040. Where does that leave the everyday investor? So what about the average holder? The one stacking a few hundred coins in hopes of early retirement? Here's a grounded perspective. Long-term adoption, backed by clarity in regulation and heavyweight partnerships, could drive XRP toward high double-digit prices. Triple-digit valuations, however, would require massive structural shifts. from full-scale banking integration to possibly even XRP-backed stablecoins. A complete 1.1 alignment with the US M1 is mathematically plausible, but socio-politically Herculean. Join the conversation. If you enjoy dissecting these bold scenarios and want to connect with others who also spend too much time buried in charts and white papers, join our free crypto Discord. There's a link below. I'm in there daily, swapping analysis, strategies, and the occasional over-caffeinated meme. The final crescendo. Now imagine this. It's January 2040, and XRP is flashing 186 out on the screen. That modest 1,000 coin bag, which costs about $2,000 today, is now the equivalent of a beachfront condo down payment. And if it hits 316s, that same stash might fund a private island, or at least a lifetime of brunches with bottomless avocado toast. Okay, jokes aside, the goal isn't to guarantee those numbers. It's to help you visualize the exponential intersection between speculative math and real-world adoption. 2040, dream or destiny. Crypto is, at its core, a massive experiment. Sometimes the lab explodes. Sometimes it revolutionizes the world. XRP's potential M1 moment sits on the outer rim of the probability spectrum, but analyzing it reveals deeper truths about value, money, and the rails that move both. Quick recap: US M1, $18.5 trillion XRP, 2.12 per coin. Hypothetical targets: $186, $316 per XRP. Reality check: the path requires regulatory clarity, structural demand, and seismic adoption shifts.